climate change represents a truly big and global strategic challenge. And of course, it is felt by everybody and everywhere. Now, the sheer size of the issue at hand can easily overwhelm us and makes it somewhat much more difficult to comprehend what it means both at a community level and concrete implications for local habitats. What if we could engage local people using existing gadgets that they already own and enhance those with some great free and low-cost tools readily available to help protect local habitats, and thereby maybe also reverse or at least stop some of the damage that has been done. The advent of consumer drones led to a growing global community of drone operators able to capture aerial footage. You're probably thinking now of this in terms of, oh yeah, nice looking photos and videos that they can share on YouTube or other social media. But to me, it's actually much more. It is the ability to collect localized aerial data. And whilst this is a great start, the real magic happens when we can combine lightweight consumer drones with third-party artificial intelligence applications, and by doing so are turning this then into a proper flying robot to collect that aerial data for us regularly and repeatedly. If anyone within that drone operator community could then deploy some of these low-cost or free cloud computing tools to analyze that data without the need for having a science degree, then we're really onto something special. Until now, using drones to explore and analyze natural habitats has been a complex process of individual tasks with many barriers along the way. It needs drone operators with advanced skills, both for flying the drone and producing three-dimensional models. The drone equipment typically used is large and heavy, often weighing more than 1.5 kilograms. As a consequence of this, the operational environment is limited and the flying envelope is restricted by airspace regulation. Oh, and you also need to have deep pockets, as costs for the drone alone can easily exceed $7,500. That is without the modeling software that adds another few $1,000s on top of that. Depending what kind of habitat you want to analyze, you may need a lot of aerial pictures. And when I say a lot, I mean like hundreds, sometimes even thousands. Taking those, even in an automated fashion, takes a lot of time, whilst often operating within challenging ecological environments and having to change the drone batteries every 30, 40 minutes or so can get very annoying and costly too. On top of that, this approach involves data storage, an awful lot of data storage, plus huge amounts of time to compute the habitat model, ranging from 48 hours or sometimes even spreading across several days. And if you haven't got sufficient computers with modern fast processors and graphic cards on tap, as well as expensive software programming expertise and possibly coding skills, guess what? You're somewhat stuck. Ultimately, that means that analyzing ecosystems and research into natural habitats with drones, despite the increasing need for more localized research in light of climate change, to date is mostly limited to few scientists and researchers. These existing restrictions and operational barriers got me thinking. So what would happen if we could tap into the global community of drone pilots and equip them with some free or low-cost artificial intelligence and cloud computing tool, empowering them to become citizen scientists who collect data and can work with local wildlife experts and park rangers on improving the habitats they actually live in. Let me show you how this could work. First, we will need to modify an off-the-shelf consumer drone by using a third-party AI application that can turn this into a flying robot. It might sound a little bit weird now, but it's much easier doing this with some of the older consumer drones, as often their firmware isn't locked anymore like by the manufacturers. That is somewhat similar to SIM locks on a mobile phone. It opens it up, meaning third-party software can be used to control it and to make it fly autonomously. In order to plan and map a flying mission for our flying bot on a desktop or laptop, we first have to log into the third-party app on their website. Once in, we have to find and select the relevant location based on a Google map that is then overlaid with a default flight pattern. The waypoints of this flight mission are further adjusted to cover the area under investigation. And in this example, a bird sanctuary at a local nature reserve has been selected. Finally, we select and adjust a few mission parameters, such as height and overlap of the individual camera shots. The application's AI algorithm then calculates how many pictures we will get and also the total flying time. Once this is completed, the mission is saved and can be used later, as well as reflown again and again. Now, the ability to refly such missions over local habitats, say weekly, monthly, or quarterly, is crucial if you want to detect, record, and analyze habitat changes over time. And there's also a similar regular need in the agricultural sector to monitor soil conditions, spread of infestations, and to measure crop yields or determine the best time for harvest. The way this works in the flying field is actually really as simple as hitting the play button and letting the flying bot do its thing. Let me demonstrate how we have used this approach to locate and measure the spread of an invasive plant that has been depleting this particular bird sanctuary of mudflats and quite severely over the last few years, which means it's been heavily impacting birds' breeding habits and food supplies for water birds and waders. Once we planned our mission, we download it in the flying field and send it to the radio controller, which then initiates the autonomous flight. It raises up to the pre-programmed height of 115 meters, and once there, its camera turns automatically downwards, and the flying bot starts traveling over the nature reserve to collect all the air data we want. You will notice areas in the footage that look almost neon green, which are the sections impacted by this invasive New Zealand pygmy-weed. Traditional methods, for instance, walking along the reserve with a measuring tape, are greatly disrupting the wildlife and are somewhat also restricted to the only accessible parts of the reserve. So really, this is out of bound, and this will often apply in many projects. In contrast, the aerial footage combined with analysis done by AI will help in determining the best treatment methods, as well as helping in measuring surface areas that have been impacted most by this weed spreading across the bird sanctuary. You can see the mission has taken around 3.5 minutes, and our flying bot has now collected around 26 pictures for us. Given that the autonomous flight mission is pre-planned, we can also refly this throughout the seasons in order to monitoring the habitat restoration efforts over time. Once the mission is complete, our flying bot will autonomously return back to the starting point and land so that we can collect it safely together with the AL data for us to analyze in the lab. So let's go back there and see what's achievable, even with just such a limited number of AL photos. We do this by uploading them via the desktop software into the cloud, where our habitat model will then be computed and generated. The process for this is relatively fast. In this case, it took around 70 minutes to compute the model of the bird sanctuary. You can now see the geospatial model on the desktop with the ability to look at the various dimensions and also maneuver around in the geospatial model. Further, we can select and mark up by dragging and dropping the pins, and the built-in function calculates the surface area for us, in this case to identify areas that are worst affected by the invasive weed. In addition to the three-dimensional model, we can also overlay the 2D orthophoto with different artificial intelligence functions to determine elevations in the landscape, for instance. And the built-in plant health analysis section contains a wide range of AI algorithms and filters, which can be applied to highlight areas for specific treatment and coloring in different areas of the habitat. When determining the optimal treatment methods, there's no right or wrong way in doing this, and it will need a combination of trial and error, as well as verifying and validating the model's observations at the actual location with researchers and experts on the ground. This approach doesn't need any coding skills, and it's really as simple as drag and drop and deploying various AI filters. When we then take two of the orthophotos taken at different times and overlay them with the help of another AI cloud software that is normally used in the medical world for assessing MRI scans, we can actually compare and contrast the state of the nature reserve before and after the treatment. All of this is possible in a couple of hours with relatively moderate powered desktop or laptop machines. This approach won't be perfect and particularly precise, but I sense that in 80% of use cases, the result will be good enough by removing almost all barriers that currently exist when deploying flying robots for ecosystem analysis and habitat restoration. Maybe most importantly, this represents a low-cost, high-impact, and widely accessible alternative, which, within the current ecological state, is becoming increasingly important, both to protect natural habitats and increase efficiency of modern agriculture. Now, by combining out-of-the-box drones with third-party AI tools and cloud computing, anyone in the global drone community can now do their bit in the fight against climate change by helping to restore, improve, and protect their local habitats. My vision is that this simple yet highly effective approach will be widely used for gaining a better understanding of local ecosystems, the interplay of the regional environmental factors within global climate change. Now, ultimately, I hope that this will help much more people within local communities to grasp how each and everyone is interconnected globally and how each of us can take much better care of our planet. Thank you so much.